What happens when a congressman's son walks into a courtroom thinking privilege makes him untouchable? The afternoon sun filters through the tall windows of Providence Municipal Court, but inside the light does nothing to soften the tension. Tyler Higgins, 24, son of Congressman Clay Higgins, swivels in his chair, filing his nails with a metal file that squeaks in the stunned silence of the room. He stretches and yawns, cracking his knuckles like a man who owns the building, his eyes flashing a smirk that challenges every law and tradition he faces. This isn't just another day for Judge Frank Caprio. Decades on the bench have exposed him to wealth, power, and arrogance, but there's something raw and almost shocking about the audacity before him today. Tyler's actions aren't just disrespectful, they threaten the core of public decency. Memorial Day ceremonies disrupted, veterans mocked, families who have lost their children to war now facing a young man who laughs while recounting his own misdeeds. Mr. Higgins, Judge Caprio begins measured yet firm. You face charges of reckless driving through a veteran's memorial, public intoxication, and threatening a federal officer. How do you respond to these serious allegations? Tyler leans back, still filing, and offers a grin. Your Honor, people just don't understand how Washington works. Some folks get intimidated when they meet real political royalty. I'm not responsible if the system can't handle it. Shock ripples through the courtroom. Elderly veterans shift uneasily in their seats. Gold Star mothers clutch their hats over their hearts. A heavy tension settles, almost tangible, as everyone present realizes the enormity of Tyler's disregard. The question hangs in the air: how long will Judge Caprio's legendary patience last, and what will happen when the full weight of justice meets this unchecked arrogance? Before we dive into the courtroom drama, remember, understanding accountability is more than a lesson in law. It's a lesson in humanity itself. The morning had started like any other at Providence Municipal Court, but it quickly spiraled into something that would be remembered for years. Tyler Higgins, son of Congressman Clay Higgins, had turned an ordinary courtroom session into a spectacle of audacity. His offense began days earlier during a solemn Memorial Day ceremony at the National Veterans Memorial. Tyler had driven his vehicle through the area where veterans were laying wreaths, narrowly missing several Gold Star mothers. Witnesses reported his erratic driving and loud shouts, denigrating the ceremony, framing the event as government theater meant to manipulate public sentiment. Officer Rebecca Chen, called to testify, painted a chilling picture. Your Honor, Mr. Higgins wasn't merely reckless. He endangered grieving families while mocking their service. His behavior could have resulted in serious injuries or worse. Her voice, steady and formal, carried the weight of truth as she described Tyler accelerating his car directly toward those kneeling, shouting about political propaganda, while veterans and families tried to carry out their remembrance. Inside the courtroom, Tyler exhibited the same blatant disregard for decorum. He filed his nails with a metallic screech that echoed unnervingly in the silent chamber. He stretched, cracked his knuckles, and yawned in an exaggerated display, all gestures that signaled defiance and entitlement. Every movement seemed calculated to challenge the patience of Judge Caprio, a man renowned for his fairness, but also for his intolerance of blatant disrespect. The gallery was filled with veterans and military families, their expressions hardening as Tyler's arrogance became tangible. Elderly men and women who had seen war's loss and sacrifice shook their heads, struggling to reconcile the young man's audacity with the solemnity of the day. A woman removed her hat, pressing it over her heart, her eyes locking on Tyler with a mixture of sorrow and disbelief. The atmosphere thickened with tension, a quiet storm of outrage restrained only by the weight of the courtroom's order. Judge Caprio's voice cut through the charged air. Mr. Higgins, you are charged with reckless driving through a veterans memorial ceremony, public intoxication, and threatening a federal peace officer. How do you respond to these serious allegations? Tyler leaned back casually, his smirk widening. Your Honor, this is blown out of proportion. Some people just don't understand Washington. When actual political royalty steps in, reactions are predictable. The courtroom reacted instantly. Shock and murmurs spread like wildfire. Several veterans audibly exhaled in disbelief. Gold Star families exchanged glances silently, communicating a shared sentiment. This young man's words and actions were not just disrespectful, they were an affront to the memory of children they had lost defending the country. Even before the legal arguments began, the scene had already crystallized Tyler's character, entitled unremorseful and dismissive of the sacred values others held dear. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test Judge Caprio's patience and moral authority. Every veteran, every grieving family, and every observer in the courtroom understood the stakes. This was more than a legal proceeding. It was a trial of character, of respect, and of the basic decency expected from every citizen, regardless of political lineage. And so as Tyler sat at the defendant's table, filing his nails and smirking at the gallery, the question hung palpably in the air. How far would his audacity go? And how would Judge Caprio respond to the recklessness and cruelty that had disrupted a sacred day of remembrance? The courtroom had grown heavy with tension, each heartbeat echoing the gravity of Tyler Higgins's actions. As Judge Frank Caprio presided with his trademark calm authority, it became clear that this was not an ordinary case of reckless behavior. Tyler, the 24-year-old son of Congressman Clay Higgins, had escalated a Memorial Day ceremony into chaos, and his audacity was now being put under the unflinching lens of justice. "Mr. Higgins," Judge Caprio began, voice measured but firm. "The incident you are charged with occurred during a solemn Memorial Day ceremony at the National Veterans Memorial. Multiple witnesses report that you drove recklessly, endangering grieving families, including Gold Star mothers. How do you respond?" Tyler leaned back, a dismissive grin on his face. "Your Honor, people overreact. These ceremonies are just tools for government propaganda. I'm exercising my constitutional rights to speak freely. If anyone felt threatened, that's their problem, not mine." Shock rippled through the courtroom. Veterans shifted uncomfortably, some gripping their hands in disbelief. Families who had come to honor their fallen sons and daughters now faced a young man who laughed while recounting his reckless behavior. One elderly veteran whispered to his neighbor, "How can someone be this heartless?" The gallery, usually respectful and subdued, buzzed with a mixture of anger and sorrow. Officer Rebecca Chen provided detailed testimony describing how Tyler accelerated his vehicle toward Gold Star families, shouting about political manipulation, nearly causing serious injury. "Your Honor," she said, "his behavior was intentional, not careless. He targeted grieving families during a sacred remembrance." Judge Caprio's eyes narrowed slightly. He had encountered many young men from powerful families who assumed influence could shield them from accountability. But Tyler's combination of political privilege, mockery, and disregard for human life tested even his legendary patience. Every word Tyler spoke, every smirk and shrug seemed designed to provoke not just the court, but the nation's sense of decency. The Gold Star family's reactions intensified. Mrs. Dorothy MacArthur, grieving her son James, who died in Iraq, clutched a small gold star pin on her dress as she listened to Tyler's rationalizations. Other mothers and fathers in the gallery exchanged pained looks. Their outrage was quiet, but palpable, a testament to the deep respect and mourning embedded in their presence. Tyler continued to rationalize, now framing his actions as a critique of militaristic indoctrination. If people really cared about preventing future casualties, he said they would challenge military authority instead of blindly honoring those who died for unjust wars. Every phrase, every tone of arrogance escalated the courtroom drama. Judge Caprio maintained composure, his gaze steady, absorbing the details of Tyler's behavior, understanding that this moment required both legal precision and moral clarity. He paused between statements, allowing the gravity of Tyler's actions and words to sink in for the courtroom, for the veterans, and for the young man before him. By the end of this sequence, the tension had reached its peak. Tyler Higgins was no longer just a defendant. He was the embodiment of reckless privilege clashing with the values of respect, honor, and sacrifice. The courtroom had become a crucible testing not only Tyler's character, but the strength of constitutional justice in the face of arrogance and moral indifference. The courtroom fell into a tense hush as Judge Frank Caprio leaned forward, his gaze piercing. It was time to confront Tyler Higgins directly with the real human consequences of his reckless and audacious behavior. Up to this point, Tyler had shrugged, smirked, and dismissed every charge and moral objection. But now the reality of the families he endangered was about to become undeniable. "Mr. Higgins," Judge Caprio said, voice steady, "Mrs. Dorothy MacArthur is present in this courtroom today. She lost her son, Lieutenant Colonel James MacArthur, 15 years ago in Iraq. Mrs. MacArthur, Would you like to address the court about what happened?" The septuagenarian approached the witness stand with quiet dignity. Her small gold star pin gleamed against her simple black dress. Despite her years of grief, she spoke with remarkable composure. "Your Honor," she began, "my son James died defending the freedoms that Mr. Higgins now attacks with his reckless actions. When he drove his vehicle through our Memorial Day ceremony, he mocked the very sacrifice that protected his right to speak freely." Tyler interrupted with a cold, dismissive tone, attempting to justify his actions. "Mrs. MacArthur, I'm sorry for your loss, but your son fought in an illegal war. My intention was to highlight the dangers of unquestioned military obedience." A wave of outrage swept through the gallery. Veterans and family members murmured in disbelief, some standing in silent protest. Judge Caprio slammed his gavel, restoring order, but allowing the weight of the confrontation to settle. Every eye was on Tyler, every ear on Mrs. MacArthur's words. The young man's smug confidence began to falter under the emotional gravity of the families he endangered. Judge Caprio continued directing Tyler to focus on the evidence. Officer Rebecca Chen recounted the specific moments when Tyler's vehicle nearly struck the grieving families, making clear that these were not abstract political statements, but real acts of endangerment. Tyler's repeated justification framing vehicular assault as dramatic moral action clashed violently with the courtroom's sense of justice. The pivot came when Judge Caprio pressed Tyler to confront the humanity behind his actions. "Mr. Higgins," he said, "these are living people. Mothers, fathers, and children who are still mourning. Do you understand the impact of what you've done?" For the first time, Tyler's smirk faltered. His eyes darted to the families before him, the gallery's collective disapproval pressing in. The tension shifted from confrontation to reflection. This moment marked the pivot, the sudden realization that privilege and arrogance could not shield him from accountability. Judge Caprio's approach combined authority with moral education. He outlined the difference between exercising constitutional rights and committing acts of reckless endangerment. He emphasized that political protest has limits, especially when it threatens the safety and dignity of others. Tyler's worldview, once so arrogant and dismissive, began to collide with the stark human reality of those he had endangered. By the end of this segment, the courtroom had reached a crucial turning point. Tyler Higgins was forced to acknowledge, at least internally, that his actions had consequences. The step from audacious defiance to moral confrontation had been made, setting the stage for the next chapter: accountability, restitution, and the transformative power of Judge Caprio's justice. The courtroom held its collective breath as Judge Frank Caprio prepared to deliver the consequences of Tyler Higgins's reckless and audacious behavior. For months, Tyler had flaunted political privilege, mocked grieving families, and justified his dangerous actions under the guise of free speech. Now he would face the full weight of accountability, tempered with education and the opportunity for moral growth. "Mr. Higgins," Judge Caprio began, his tone calm but authoritative, "your behavior showed profound disrespect for the families and veterans present during the Memorial Day ceremony. You used your vehicle as a weapon, endangering those mourning their children. Such actions cannot go without consequence." Tyler's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of uncertainty replacing the smirk that had dominated his demeanor throughout the proceedings. He leaned forward as Judge Caprio outlined the consequences: a fine of $15,000 for reckless vehicular endangerment, revocation of driving privileges for 2 years, emphasizing that the privilege to drive cannot come at the expense of public safety, 200 hours of community service at veterans' hospitals and family support organizations, directly assisting those whose lives he had endangered, comprehensive constitutional law courses teaching the distinction between protected political expression and criminal assault, personal apology letters to every Gold Star family affected by his actions, acknowledging their sacrifice and his wrongdoing without requiring him to abandon his political beliefs. Judge Caprio addressed Tyler directly, making the moral framework clear. "This is not about changing your political views, Mr. Higgins. It is about ensuring that your expression of those views does not harm others. You will learn to exercise your rights responsibly and to respect the humanity of those who have made the ultimate sacrifice for this country." The courtroom witnessed a profound moment of justice infused with education. Veterans and family members, previously tense and outraged, saw the law applied with fairness, yet also with an opportunity for redemption. Tyler Higgins, confronted with the tangible consequences of his actions, began to grasp the magnitude of what he had done. Judge Caprio's ruling was a masterclass in restorative justice, holding Tyler accountable, enforcing legal penalties, and fostering moral and civic education simultaneously. The lesson was clear: not all power shields one from responsibility, and civic privilege does not excuse recklessness or cruelty. By the time the gavel came down, the courtroom's atmosphere had shifted. Anger and shock gave way to reflection and the possibility of change. Tyler's understanding of patriotism, service, and civic duty would be tested in the coming months through direct engagement with those he had wronged, setting the stage for his eventual personal transformation and the final chapter of this case. 6 months had passed since Tyler Higgins's recklessness had shocked the courtroom and endangered grieving families. Today he returned to Judge Caprio's courtroom a changed man. Gone was the smirk of entitlement, replaced by a quiet respect for the process and the families present. Simple clothing replaced flashy gestures, and a new awareness of personal responsibility was evident in his posture and demeanor. Judge Caprio reviewed Tyler's extensive compliance documentation. Reports from supervisors at veterans' hospitals and family support organizations described him as respectful, attentive, and genuinely engaged. Every apology letter he had written to the Gold Star families had been received with understanding and appreciation. Tyler had confronted the human impact of his actions and internalized the lesson true. Civic responsibility comes from respect and empathy, not defiance and arrogance. Mr. Higgins, Judge Caprio said, voice calm yet imbued with gravity. Your service supervisors report that your work has been constructive and appreciated. Your apology letters were sincere. Tell me what you have learned from this experience. Tyler stood visibly emotional. Your Honor, 6 months ago, I thought patriotism meant blind obedience to the government and unquestioned support of all military policies. I now understand that real patriotism is about serving others while respecting those who made ultimate sacrifices. Working with military families has shown me that one can love their country while still critiquing policies responsibly. The Gold Star families present nodded, some with tears quietly streaming. Mrs. Dorothy MacArthur spoke with grace that had marked her throughout the proceedings. Mr. Higgins, thank you for learning the difference between respectful political dissent and criminal behavior. James would have appreciated your willingness to serve and understand his fellow veterans and their families. Judge Caprio concluded with a reflection on the broader moral lesson. Mr. Higgins, you entered this courtroom believing political dissent justified harm. You leave understanding that it is possible to criticize policies while honoring those who sacrifice for this country. Patriotism is about service, respect, and responsibility, not about imposing your beliefs through dangerous actions. The charges against Tyler were dismissed. He had completed the community service, constitutional law education, and personal reconciliation with the families he endangered. Outside the courthouse, Tyler began a new chapter of life, one dedicated to helping military families, understanding the weight of sacrifice, and advocating for civic responsibility with empathy rather than arrogance. Judge Caprio later reflected in his case notes, when political beliefs are used to justify harm, the law must intervene. But justice is not only punitive, it is transformative. True patriotism is caring for a community greater than oneself and respecting those who have given everything for our freedom. Tyler Higgins had learned that protecting the freedoms of others requires more than words. It requires action guided by empathy, respect, and a commitment to the values he once dismissed. From reckless audacity to reflective service, his journey became a testament to accountability, redemption, and the enduring lessons of civic responsibility.